Before Season of the Deep launch, I made this video talking about how Stormcaller could potentially be the next best Warlock build. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's really good. That makes me so excited because I have absolutely loved Stormcaller Warlock pretty much through the entirety of Destiny. As we all know, when Arc 3.0 launched, Warlocks were not the greatest, but with a lot of buffs alongside artifact perks and even surges playing into this build super well in Season 21, I honestly believe this has the potential to be the best Warlock build in the game currently. It covers absolutely everything you needed to cover, from at clear to single target damage, and it's good in normal content and in-game. So if you want to disintegrate literally every single enemy on the battlefield, I would definitely give this build a try. Now really quick, I do want to mention I am on the road to 40,000 subscribers, so if y'all enjoy my content or find it helpful, consider subscribing and dropping a like. It really does help the channel out and goes a long way, and all support is truly appreciated. And finally, if you would like an in-depth infographic of this build, I will have a link down below to take you over mobalytics, and you can look at everything there while I go over it all in the video. But without further ado, let's jump into one of my favorite builds in the entire history of Destiny. All right, so I think starting off, we need to go over the basic fundamentals of the build. You're going to be hearing the words Jolt, Amplified, and Onyx Traces a lot, so let's start off there. Jolt is essentially a debuff that will attach to an enemy, and when you're doing damage to that target, it will take some additional damage and also chain arc damage to nearby enemies. This did receive a nerf in Season of the Deep, but in all honesty, it's really not that noticeable. It still absolutely shreds everything in the game, and is still probably one of the best at clear mechanics in the entire game. And next up, we have Amplified. Now, Amplified is a buff that will apply to you after you get arc weapon multi-kills, or also things from your subclass alone can make you amplified. While you're amplified, you're going to have improved weapon handling and basically just move a lot faster. You can also proc the speed booster buff that will make you sprint at max speed, and this also did receive buffs in Season of the Deep. Then finally, you have Onyx Traces, which is arc stasis shards or void breaches. However, these will actually track to you and refund all of your ability energy every single time you pick them up. These are going to play a very vital part of the build, so it's good to know how they work. All right, so let's start off with our subclass, and let's take a look at our aspects: Arc Soul and Electrostatic Mind. Arc Soul says cast your rift to create an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of you. Allies can pass through your rift to get an Arc Soul. Your rift charges faster when allies are near. While Amplified, your Arc Souls are supercharged and gain increased fire rate. Arc Soul is honestly a very strong aspect. The damage alone from the Arc Soul is already enough to warrant taking this, especially when you become amplified, because it does become supercharged and it can absolutely melt a ton of stuff in the game. Being that your teammates can walk into your rift and pick up an Arc Soul will also kind of make this into a support based build, because you're going to have your entire team being able just to do some extra damage. This did receive a 71% damage buff a while back, and it is extremely noticeable. In absolute any content, you're going to see so much benefits from Arc Soul, even if it's just from one-shotting lower tier enemies in normal content, doing some extra damage on really harder content, and even against bosses. If it is in range, having 6 Arc Souls in a raid scenario constantly shooting will add so much DPS if it is a long DPS phase. Overall, there's nothing really bad to say about Arc Soul, and it doesn't even end there, because it also does have the benefit that your rift will recharge faster when allies are near. Like I mentioned earlier about Arc Soul being a support aspect, this is going to play into that very well. You're going to be able to constantly get your rift recharged, and if you're running something like Healing Rift, you can obviously provide healing, or Empowering Rift, you can provide damage. I would highly recommend pretty much always running Healing Rift, because multiple Healing Rifts around the battlefield means that your teammates can always heal, and again, you're also going to be giving them an Arc Soul every time they run through them. This build is as strong offensively as it is defensively, and this aspect really plays a huge part into that. But now let's jump over to Electrostatic Mind, and this is defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Onyx Trace. Collecting an Onyx Trace makes you amplified. So the really good part about this aspect is that pretty much using anything in your kit, your grenade, your melee, your weapon, you're always going to be generating these Onyx Traces that will track to you. Again, these will refill all your ability energy, but it also does have the added benefit that when you pick up an Onyx Trace, you become amplified. Amplified will play a strong role into this build once we get into our artifact perks, but the really cool benefit as of now is the fact that when you get an Arc Soul kill, that can make an Onyx Trace, which then will make you amplified, and then when you're amplified, that Arc Soul will become supercharged. So it's kind of the synergy that can go back and forth. They play off of each other very well, and with both of these aspects combined, you're pretty much going to have infinite ability energy. Now, before we jump further into the subclass, I actually do want to take a look at our exotic now that we have a basic understanding of how our stuff's going to work, and that is the Fallen Sunstar. This has the exotic perk Ionic Conductor. Ionic Traces you create move faster and grant you additional ability energy. Nearby allies also gain ability energy when you collect an Ionic Trace. So now all of the Onyx Traces we're going to be creating will move faster and they will grant you additional ability energy. Pretty much 3 Onyx Traces with this build is enough to fully refund every single one of your abilities, so there is no reason you should not be spamming your abilities all the time. And this also does have a second part which plays heavily into that support role again, where when you collect Onyx Traces nearby allies, you will also grant them ability energy. So you're going to be making Onyx Traces constantly. That's obviously going to be refilling your energy, but now on top of that, you're going to be giving all your teammates ability energy as well. So when you're in a group, you're going to be providing your teammates ability energy, Onyx Traces, and constant clean rifts all the time for health, damage, and more ability spam on their builds, all while also improving your build alone by getting that extra energy as well. Now, if you don't have a Fallen Sunstar, something like Crown of Tempest is also a really good option. I think overall though, with this build, Fallen Sunstar is a better option, and it also will heavily play into helping your teammates as well. But all right, let's jump back into the subclass, and the grenade I'm going to be running is Pulse Grenade. This grenade will periodically just pulse out damage when you throw it. This did receive a 20% damage buff, and out of all the other grenades, nothing else really comes close to how good this can be. Now, if you want to run Storm Grenade, that is probably going to be your next best option, but I think Pulse Grenade with that 20% damage buff is just really, really good. Now, for my melee, I'm going to be running Chain Lightning. This does what it says in its name. It's going to chain lightning everywhere, but it will also jolt enemies. While you're amplified, it will also make additional chains, so it's a very, very good at clear melee. Now, I do want to mention that Ball Lightning also received a 30% damage buff, and they made it so the Ball Lightning will not actually hit enemies out, so it hits a little bit more. I've played around with this, but in all honesty, I think Chain Lightning is still the better melee. It has a lower cooldown. It's really good for ad clear, and it also does jolt enemies, which will stun overload champions. However, if you do enjoy Ball Lightning, it is a better option to take now, but I think overall the best option will be Chain Lightning. Now, for our super Chaos Reach and Storm Trance Gap buff, the main problem with this build, in my opinion, is the fact that pretty much everything in your kit is going to be really good for ad clear, so that's why I would highly recommend running Chaos Reach, because that's going to be really good for single target damage. This did receive a 25% damage buff, and also with some of our artifact perks and the ability to now make a Jolt and Lightning Strike, this super does feel a lot better. I'm still not 100% sure if this is going to be one of the better supers in the game, but all I can say as of testing, it definitely feels a whole lot better than what it used to. It can actually deal with champions now, it can do some pretty good damage to a boss, and it still does have that added benefit of being able to cancel it, so if you do use it on something like a champion, you can cancel it and save a bunch of super energy. Overall, Chaos Reach feels a whole lot better now with its buff, and it is definitely what I would recommend using with this build. But now let's jump into Fragments to round the whole subclass out. We have Spark of Resistance, so while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. This fragment is extremely strong for your survivability. When you're surrounded by combatants in a tough fight, you're just taking reduced damage, and with the amount of ways you're gonna be able to heal with this build, you can pretty much stay up 24/7. This does also stack with other resilient based things, and you can pretty much just become unkillable. Now, our next fragment is Spark of Shock. So this is your arc grenades jolt targets. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It's just gonna make any grenades you take be able to jolt. Again, jolt is one of the best ad clear verbs in the game, alongside being able to stun overload champions, and since you're gonna be able to spam grenades all the time, you can jolt an entire battlefield. Then next we have Spark of Ion. So defeating a jolted target creates an Onyx Trace, and this is going to be really good because again, you want to make as many Onyx Traces as possible. This will also stack with electrostatic mines, so this means you're going to be receiving even more Onyx Traces that will constantly feed your energy and also your teammates. And then finally we have Spark of Magnitude. So your lingering arc grenades, lightning grenade, pulse grenade, and storm grenade have extended duration. Now, since I'm running a pulse grenade, this will obviously make the pulse grenade last longer, which means I can constantly jolt enemies more if they walk into it. If you don't want to run this, since you already have the ability to spam grenades all the time anyway, you could opt in to take something like Spark of Amplitude, so you can make even more orbs of power. But even then, you're already going to be making orbs a ton with this build, even without this, so I would definitely recommend just running Spark of Magnitude to increase that pulse grenade a little bit more. So that is the subclass, and again, pairing that with the exotic, you're going to be able to constantly heal your teammates, give them arc souls, have jolt everywhere on the battlefield, give your teammates ability energy. You're also going to have infinite ability energy on top of everything, and the whole kit is just extremely strong for ad clear. And then on top of that, you also have your arc soul and chaos reach to help out with single target damage. And trust me, again, chaos reach feels so much better now. But really quick, I do do want to go over stat distribution because that is an important part of the build. Mainly, we're going to be focusing on 100 resilience because this will give you that 30% damage reduction, which again will stack with spark of resistance to make it even more tanky. Now, the next stat is definitely 100 discipline because you want to have your grenades on the battlefield as much as possible, so this will just give you even more grenade cooldown rate. Then finally, I would definitely recommend recovery so you can get your rift cooldown back. This also does help out with survivability a lot because you will start reaching health a little bit faster. But again, having that rift cooldown, pairing that with arc soul, that will also give you increased cooldown. You can spam rifts all the time. Spamming rifts to give all the benefits I've talked about earlier is good, but that also will play another vital part of this build when we get into our mods. Now let's talk about some weapons for this build. First off, I would always try to run a arc weapon in both your energy slot and also your power slot. We're going to be taking advantage of some mods that will help out with these, but if you do want to swap out your power weapon for anything else, you can do that. But I would always recommend an arc weapon because these can roll with a perk called Volt Shot. Volt Shot says reloading this weapon after defeating a target overcharges this weapon for an improved short period of time, causing it to jolt on its next hit. This jolt effect is the exact same jolt effect from your subclass, and it will play into everything we've already went over with this entire build. Not only is it really strong for some extra single target damage and really good for ad clear, it also is again going to be making onyx traces, so your weapon in a way kind of has wellspring because you're constantly going to be refilling all your ability energy with this perk. Now there are a lot of weapons in the game that can roll Volt Shot now, things like Brick and Slaw Cannon, Tarnished Metal. I highly would recommend that Keyless SMG. It's still probably the best one in my opinion. It has one of the better origin traits alongside being an SMG, so it's pretty much going to be one of the best things in PvE. But even if you need to run something without Volt Shot, I honestly have been whipping out the Sweet Sorrow, and this thing has been absolutely amazing with the Lantic origin trait to give you damage reduction alongside stats for all, one for all, giving that damage and all those extra stats for reload speed. This thing can absolutely shred. And then for your other two slots, I would definitely recommend a really good single target damage weapon. I love running conditional finality for this build. It really helps out with unstoppable champions alongside already having intrinsic overload with Jolt. This will absolutely just destroy anything coming close to you, since single target is where this build lacks a little bit. But if you want to run something like Izanagi's Arbalist, that could also be really good. Or if you need to run something like Riptide and carry an exotic power weapon, you could as well. But I honestly would try to stick to having an exotic single target damage weapon because it will help you out a ton with this build. And then obviously for power, again, just use whatever's meta. I love running a hot hit because it is arc, and it's also really good if we're doing DPS phase with rockets. I can reload it extremely fast with field prep and some of my other mods, and overall this is pretty much just the main three weapons I run all the time with this build. Now, artifact perks. This artifact is really crazy this season for arc because you have a bunch of stuff that plays into it. First off, you have electric armor, which should be amped up. The names are kind of switched up right now for some reason, but this is stay amplified longer while your arc subclass is equipped. This is definitely not the best one out of all the ones we're going to get into, but this does provide a nice little plus 5 seconds to amplify, which is really good just to keep that buff up. Now we also have Thunderous Retort, so grants bonus super damage if cast while critically wounded or while amplified, lasts until the end of super activation. So obviously this is going to pair extremely well with this one because you stay amplified longer, which means you can always get that extra damage for your super. This is going to be a 30% damage increase for your chaos reach, which is really nice, and you're always going to be amplified with things like electrostatic mod and amped up paired together, so you're just always going to have this extra damage boost. But now let's take a look at what should be electric armor but gain damage resistance while amplified. So since you're amplified all the time, again, you're always going to have this damage resistance. I'm pretty sure this is a 25% damage reduction, which again will stack with resilience and spark of resistance, so you're going to become very tanky with this one artifact perk equipped. Now lightning strikes twice is the next one, so after throwing an arc grenade, gain increased grenade recharge rate for a short time. Arc final blows extend the duration of this benefit, so this is going to provide you with a 150% increase to your grenade cooldown rate, and then every time you get a arc kill, it can be with your weapon, your arc soul, any of your other abilities, super, it will extend the duration. It is very strong. It is just a passive buff in the background that will be up 24/7, and you always get more grenade cooldown rate. Then finally we have Shock and Awe. So arc final blows while you're amplified summon a burst of lightning that damage and jolts targets. This is the really fun and flashy one. Anytime you get an arc kill, again, abilities, arc soul, weapon, super, anything, you can actually call down a lightning strike that would do a good amount of damage and jolt targets. The jolt targets is the main benefit of this, because you can pretty much just get a kill with anything and now everything's jolted. It is very, very strong. It does have a small cooldown, but it is still well worth taking it in this arc build. But now let's jump over into mods, and this is where this build is going to get even better. So let's start off with our helmet. We're going to be taking a harmonic siphon. So rapid arc weapon final blows make an orb of power. This is going to be one of those mods I was talking about. Be sure to try to take arc weapons as much as possible so you can make as many orbs as possible. Orbs are going to be really good for helping your teammates out. It's going to give you some super energy and also will provide you with armor charge. Now we're also going to be running an ashes to asset, so gain bonus super energy on grenade kills. Since we're going to spam grenades all the time, this is a no-brainer to take. We can get a lot of super energy for our newly buffed chaos reach to take out targets pretty much whenever we want to. Now to also help out with super cooldown, we're going to be running dynamo, so reduces super cooldown when using your class ability near targets. Since we can spam our rifts all the time as well, we're going to be getting even more super energy, pairing that with ashes to assets, and with the ability to cancel your chaos reach if there's no targets around. You can have pretty much permanent super up all the time. Now for our arms, I'm going to be running an arc loader, so this will just increase the reload speed of my arc weapons. Again, try to take as many arc weapons as possible so you can take advantage of all your mods. This is going to be really good so you can constantly rock vault shot over and over again. Then firepower is our next mod, so your grenade final blows will create orbs of power. This is going to be really good since again we're going to be spamming grenades. You're going to make orbs of this and also with harmonic siphon. And then finally for arms, we have bolstering detonation, so it grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a grenade. So this is where the build gets really fun with mods. So every time we do damage with our pulse grenade, we're going to be granted rift energy. That will also play heavily into our other mods when we get into our bond. Now for our chest piece, just go with any resistant mods. These are always the best things to take. Be sure to swap these out for whatever content you're going into. Now for our legs, I'm going to be running a recuperation, so you replenish health each time you pick up an orb of power. We're going to be making orbs everywhere with this build, and obviously your teammates also can too, so you're going to have constant regeneration coming from this. Now I'm also going to be taking innovation, so we'll reduce our grenade cooldown when we pick up orbs. Again, just like recuperation, getting that health, now we just get some extra grenade energy every time we get orbs. Then finally, I run an absolution, so we can reduce the cooldown of all our abilities when we pick up an orb of power. Now, like I said earlier, don't be scared. Spam your abilities all the time, because with things like absolution and ionic traces, you're constantly refilling them all the time. Now, for my class item, I'm going to be running a bomber, so I'll reduce my grenade cooldown when I use my class ability. Again, if we go back up to bolstering detonation, when I use my grenade, I'll get class ability energy. Then also now when I use my class ability, I will get grenade energy. So they go back and forth. Again, they synergize extremely well, and you can just constantly spam those abilities back and forth. Now, a fun mod that came out this season is Powerful Attraction. So automatically collect nearby orbs of power when you activate your class ability. This is going to be really strong because you're going to be spamming rifts all the time everywhere, and this will also proc things like recuperation, innervation, and absolution. So basically, if you're in a situation where you're about to die, you can throw a healing rift down to collect recuperation orbs, and between the healing rift healing you and recuperation healing you, you pretty much go to max health immediately. And once again, since you have the ability to pretty much place rifts everywhere, you can always pick these orbs up that will also constantly give your energy back, and it really helps out with this build's ability to just always have your cooldowns up. And then our final mod is Utility Kickstart. So whenever we use our class ability energy, we will actually be granted some more, and the more armor charge stacks we have, the more we will get. So this is our only mod that is taking advantage of armor charge, so we're pretty much gonna always have max armor charge all the time, so we're always going to get the benefit of having 3 armor charge stacks when we use this mod. This again will just further help with the ability spam of this build. That is pretty much the entirety of this build. As a recap, again, every single one of your mods is pretty much playing into constantly refilling your ability energy alongside your exotic also doing that. The subclass is pretty much going to be able to make everything become jolted alongside doing some good super damage. You also have the ability to support your teammates with things like Arc Soul, and also pairing that with Fallen Sunstar. On top of all that, you're going to be very tanky with things like Spark of Resistance, your artifact perk that gives you even more damage resistance while you amplify, and your 100 resilience. You're also going to be making Ionic Traces everywhere, which again are also getting buffed Fallen Sunstar, which heavily plays into that ability spam. And your weapons will also even have the ability to proc jolt with things like Volt Shot and our artifact perk Shock and Awe. This build is extremely fun. It is definitely something I would recommend you all try out. And again, I seriously think it has potential to be the best build for Warlocks this season. Now, like I do at the end of all these videos, if you were curious about the Transmog, this is what I'm running. If you want to make your Warlock look like this, they actually did release a new ornament for Fallen Sunstar, which honestly looks pretty sick, pairing it with the new Warlock chest piece as well. I really like the whole vibe this is giving off. I think it is really sick. So if you want to make your Warlock look like this, again, here's the Transmog. But all right, I think that is going to do it all for this video. Let me know what you all think about this build in the comments below. I saw a ton of comments from y'all that was wanting me to post this build or asking me to post the update of this build, and I really do appreciate that. If you all would like to see any specific builds as well, be sure to comment them down below. But overall, I just really hope you all enjoyed the video. As always though, I truly appreciate all the support that you all give. This season's been off to a great start so far, and we're getting closer to that 40,000 subscriber mark every single day. And again, I just truly appreciate everything that you all do. But enough rambling. This video has definitely went on for way too long. I really hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day. Peace.